Hi everyone, and welcome to our channel. Today, I've got a really special story for you. It is about a young boy who proves that you do not need to be big and strong to be a hero. This is the story of Tim and his amazing drone buddy, Dip. Our story starts with 8-year-old Tim. He's got bright blonde hair and a heart full of adventure. His best friend isn't a kid from his class or his neighborhood. It's a super smart drone named Zip. Zip isn't just any drone. He can talk, think, and even has his own special blinking lights that show how he feels. They're an inseparable duo, always ready for the next big mission. One quiet afternoon, Tim was hanging out at home when he saw his dad reading the newspaper. A big, bold headline jumped out at him, and what it said made his stomach drop. It was about a tiny village school tucked away high in the mountains of Baluchistan. The school wasn't made of bricks and glass like Tim's. It was just a simple mud hut. The article described how the children there had very little food and almost no water to drink. Imagine living in a place with no rivers nearby. The villagers relied completely on the rain to grow their wheat, their only source of food for the entire year. Every grain they harvested was precious, stored carefully to make sure everyone had enough to eat until the next rainy season. But the newspaper story got even scarier. A dangerous group called the Dakota was threatening the village. They were demanding money, a ransom from people who had almost nothing. And if the villagers couldn't pay, the Dakota swore they would steal all of their stored food. This would mean starvation for everyone. As Tim read this, his heart started pounding like a drum. He suddenly remembered his friend, Kalu. Kalu was also 8 years old, and he lived in that very same village. Tim was terrified for his friend. Right beside him, Zip's lights began to blink faster and faster, a signal that he was just as worried as Tim. His robotic voice was firm and clear. "We must help," he declared. And just like that, their mission began. There was no time to waste. Tim and Zip sprang into action. They knew they had to pack quickly and get to the village as soon as possible. Tim grabbed his trusty rucksack and started stuffing it with everything he thought the villagers might need. He packed stacks of biscuits for energy and as many water bottles as he could fit. He knew how important clean water was, especially for the children. Meanwhile, Zip, with his clever little robotic arms, had an idea of his own. He gathered up a big bag of colorful lollipops. He knew that sometimes a little bit of sweetness can bring a smile, even in the toughest of times. With their bags packed and their spirits high, they set off on their journey. It was a long and challenging trip, traveling over rough terrain to reach the remote mountain village. But the thought of helping Kalu and his community kept them going. When they finally arrived, the sight was both heartbreaking and heartwarming. The village was just as the newspaper had described, small, dusty, and clearly struggling. But the people had a strength in their eyes that was truly inspiring. The moment Kalu saw Tim, his face lit up with a huge, joyful smile. It was a reunion filled with relief and happiness. Kalu was so thrilled to see his friend that he wanted to show him his gratitude. He introduced Tim to his own best friend, a gentle, sturdy donkey named Raju. "He's yours to use while you're here," Kalu said generously. Tim couldn't help but laugh as he climbed onto Raju's back. The donkey walked proudly through the village's dusty paths, his head held high, as if he knew he was carrying an important guest. The first thing they did was share what they had brought. Tim handed out the biscuits and water bottles, and the villagers accepted them with grateful hands. The children's eyes widened with delight as Zip buzzed around, handing out the lollipops he had so thoughtfully packed. For a little while, the worries of the Dakota faded away. There were smiles, laughter, and a sense of hope in the air. The small gifts had brought a moment of happiness to a community that desperately needed it. But that peaceful moment was shattered all too soon. Suddenly, the ground seemed to tremble as a group of men on horseback galloped into the village. At the front was their leader, a menacing figure who radiated cruelty. It was the Dakota. The wind turned cold, and a hush fell over the villagers. Everyone froze, their earlier smiles vanishing in an instant. The leader's sharp eyes landed on Tim and Zip, seeing a boy from the city and a futuristic drone. He immediately assumed they were rich. He probably thought they'd be an easy target. He tried to scare them, his voice booming across the village square. He thought a little boy would be easy to intimidate. But he underestimated Tim, seeing the fear in the villager's eyes and thinking of his friend Kalu. Tim felt a surge of anger and courage. He wasn't going to let this bully terrorize these good people. He stood up tall, planted his feet firmly on the ground, and looked the Dakota leader straight in the eye. His voice didn't tremble. "Leave this village now," he said, his words ringing with a bravery that surprised everyone, including himself. "This is your only warning. If you come back, the police will deal with you." For a moment, there was a stunned silence. The Dakota leader and his men stared at this small, determined boy who dared to stand up to them. They were used to people cowering in fear, not fighting back with words. They looked at each other, a flicker of uncertainty in their eyes. Maybe this kid wasn't alone? Maybe he really did have a way to call the police. The threat, coming from someone so unexpected, made them hesitate. After a tense standoff, the leader grunted, turned his horse around, and without another word, he and his men disappeared back into the mountains from where they came. The village erupted in cheers. The immediate danger was gone, but the villagers still needed food and supplies. Luckily, Tim had come prepared for this too. Before he left home, his dad had given him some money, telling him to use it wisely to help the villagers. With this money, the village elders were able to go to the nearest market and buy wheat, rice, and other essential supplies to restock their storerooms. That night, for the first time in a long time, the village felt safe and secure. The air was filled with the smell of cooking food and the sound of happy chatter, not fear. With their mission accomplished, it was time for Tim and Zip to head home. They said their goodbyes to a very grateful Kalu and all the other villagers. The journey back was long, and they were both exhausted, but their hearts were full. They had faced down bullies, brought hope to a community in need, and made a real difference. As they traveled home, Tim looked at Zip, whose lights were blinking a soft, happy rhythm. They had proven something important that day. You don't have to be a giant or have superpowers to be a hero. Sometimes, all it takes is a little bit of courage, a kind heart, and a good friend by your side. Even the smallest heroes can make the biggest difference. And that's the end of our story for today. What did you think of Tim and Zip's adventure? It just goes to show that compassion and bravery come in all sizes. Thanks so much for watching. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe to our channel for more inspiring tales. We'll see you in the next video.